Imagine you're a Palo Alto firewall administrator and your company wants you to block all social media, except for YouTube. How do you approach this? Do you use URL categories, URL filtering, or even FQDNs on your security policies? If you've ever been unsure about when to use each method, you're not alone. I was in the same boat a few years ago. In this video, I'll break it all down with clear explanations and live examples. So let's dive in. Hi, if we haven't met before, my name is Ricardo. I'm the founder of NetSums, where we help security professionals level up their skills. And in this video today, we want to go through these following tasks. Allow access to developers.google.com for the Active Directory group grp-fw developers. Allow access to star.github.com for the Active Directory group grp-fw GitHub. Allow access to category gambling for the group grp-fw gambling. And the last one, allow all users to access some categories and deny access to others. So let's go to the fire and start configuring these tasks. So I'm connected to my panorama, and the first example we're going to configure is the access to developers.google.com for the Active Directory group grp-fw developers. So let's go. We start going to policies. My post rules, PAVM, that's correct. We're going to add a rule under this one, for example, under the rule 6. So we click on this rule 6, click on add, and here I'm going to add the name, allow users to developer.google.com. Description, you can enter if you want. Everything else I'm just going to leave like this. And the source, I'm going to enter inside. Source address, let's suppose my clients are in the network 10.0.1.0. And as a source user, I already have group mapping configuration to my Windows Active Directory, which I have in my lab. And there I already have all my groups synchronized. So I'm going to choose here the GFW developers. As a destination, I'm going to enter outside. And now, as a destination address, I have the option to enter an FQDN here on this field, destination address. But I also have another option to enter a URL category. What are the main differences? The biggest difference is that here on the destination address, the file resolves this URL to an IP address or two IP addresses, and it enters this IP address or these IP addresses in its forwarding table. So here we're talking about layer 3. We're talking about the layer of the IP address. The file is filtering, actually is trying to match IP addresses. In contrast to the URL category, here, the file is not trying to resolve this IP address or addresses. The file reads the packets all the way up to the HTTP header, and it tries to match, I think it's called the host name, the value of the host name in the HTTP header with the URL that the user here gave. So you can see for the file, it's a lot more work to go all the way up to the layer 7 to see if it matches or not. This is one thing. This is the biggest difference. And the next one would be that the URL category mainly works only for HTTP or HTTPS. In the HTTP case, it looks at the header, HTTPS. If you have SSL decryption active for the traffic, the file is able to see, to look at the header of the packet. If you don't have SSL decryption, so the file looks at the certificates that are being exchanged in order to try to match the SNE field of the certificates with the URL that you're giving here. It's another way that the file is trying to match, but you can see it's a lot more work for the file to try to match this URL category. There are some advantages of using this URL category. I'm going to show you later. But in this case, if I have a fixed URL, I would, and in this example, I'm going to set, use an FQDN. So I'm going to click here. Do I have this one already? No, I have Google Docs. Okay, so I'm going to create a new one. FQDN - developer.google.com. I'm going to copy this. Here I'm going to choose FQDN and enter here the FQDN. If you click on resolve, you're going to see the IP address or the IP addresses that the file sees for this URL. So click OK. And that's the FQDN that I have. An application is mainly SSL. If the traffic is being decrypted, it could be that the file would match with web browsing. If you look at here at Google, you can see that Google also has a lot of them. I don't really know which one the file is going to match. I'm just going to leave like this, SSL and web browsing for this test. If you want to know, one way that I would recommend you to do, it would be to click on any, and you know the port. So you can use the port 443. And then after somebody tries the connection and it works, you can look at the monitor to see which application the fire is seeing for this session. This is also another way. I'm just going to leave with application default, and here I'm going to just leave SSL and web browsing for this example, okay? Here we don't have to do anything. In action, we're going to allow this. So I click on OK. And there's my rule for this first example. You can scroll to so you can see the group, developers, my target, FQDN developer, google.com, application default. This one outside has a red because it has a tag. You can come here and edit. You can also add here a tag outside. I think this new version, I just made an update. You can see here that it's not matching anything. Doesn't matter. It's not matching anything. I think there's a little bug in the newest version. The version I have 11.2.5 H1. I just updated maybe 2 days ago. This is the newest one that Palo Alto has now to offer. Okay, so this was the first one. So the next one is going to be allow access to star.github.com to the Active Directory group grp_fw_github. So we're going to enter this next rule just under this one. Add allow users to star.github.com. Source again, the same users, lab 10.0.1.0. Source user, it's going to be the GitHub people, their GitHub. Destination, outside. I cannot use an FQDN with a wildcard domain. In this case, star.github.com is a wildcard. Why can I not use it? Because the file is not able to resolve this FQDN to an IP address. This is not a simple URL. This is a wildcard domain. So in this case, we need to let the firewall match it with the HTTP header, or with how the firewall does with a HTTPS to match the certificate. So we're going to leave this empty as any, because star.github.com can have any IP address in the network. You could also do like this. I'm going to negate everything that's, do I have? Yes, I have a group there. I can negate private IP addresses because I know star.github.com is going to have a public IP address. So in this case here, I can negate. In production, I would use this negate with something here. I'm not a big fan of using any unless I really have to. In this case, I don't really have to. Application. Again, the same thing. The Palo Alto has some GitHub, or I can also use GitHub. Let's say use GitHub, SSL, and web browsing. I've had this question before. Allowing web browsing shouldn't be done. That's not really true. When the file decrypts traffic, the file is using web browsing with the port 443. Let me just finish here and then I'm going to show you something that depends on GitHub and SSH. Add to current rule. And in this case here, I'm going to use the port 443 because if I'm allowing SSH and also the web browsing, I'm going to only allow port 443. I'm going to finish this here. I want to show you something. Actions allow. This is fine. Let me just go to objects. This is not really part of this video, but I just want to show you. So if I search for web browsing, if you click on web browsing, you're going to see that the standard port is port 80, which I agree. This is clear text over port 80 that you should try to avoid to allow this port. But you have a secure port for web browsing, which is called 443, which the file usually uses when you can decrypt the traffic. So if you cannot decrypt the traffic, it's most probably SSL. But if you can decrypt the traffic, there's a big chance that the file is going to recognize the traffic as web browsing. If you say that you're only allowing web browsing over port 443, this is not insecure. Just wanted to show you this. Let's go back to policies. Let's go back to the first one, developer.google.com. Here, I should also enter 443. Because if I allow, where's my application? Okay, I forgot to enter the application. SSL. And web browsing. Okay. Since I'm allowing web browsing, just only allow port 443 and then you'll be fine. Okay? So let's go. Next one, allow users to star.github.com. He is missing something. We're gonna go fix it right now. What is missing is the URL category, of course. So we're gonna click on add. I think I don't have this. GitHub. No, I don't have. We're gonna add a new one, but it's not here that we can add. Click on OK. Let's go to objects. And here under URL category, that's where you can add our star.github.com, which would be our custom object. So I click on add. I'm gonna call this star.github.com. And under, I have a type URL list or category match. I'm gonna choose URL list, click on add. And here I'm gonna enter star.github.com. And I'm gonna put a slash in the end. To ensure an exact entry match, use a /. It means that if I have github.com / only matches github.com or whatever you have as a subdomain, but you wouldn't match github.com.au, for example, for Australia. You have the github.com and it has to finish here. If I didn't have the /, you would match github.com.au, for example. And usually, you also want to allow the main domain. I usually do this. So click on OK. Now I have my URL category created. Go to the policy. Go to URL category, and I can choose the one that I created. It's a custom URL list. And the rule should be done. Let's go take a look. From inside, for the group FW GitHub, to the outside. You can see when you negate an object, it's just crossed like this. The applications that we are allowing, port 443. By the way, if you cannot see here, there is this option called URL category, which is not automatically active. And here you can see star.github.com. Okay, so this was the second one. Now the third one, we're going to allow access to category gambling for the group GRP FW gambling. There is a license that the Palo Alto sells. It's called URL filtering or advanced URL filtering. I think it has both. This license allows you to use the categories that the Palo Alto offer in their, what they call PanDB, in their database. They have a huge database of URLs that they have some crawlers that try to guess which categories each website has or is. For you to use this PanDB, you have to have this license, the URL filtering license. In my case, I have, but you can still use, even if you don't have this license, let me go back to the other one, you can still use this URL category if you have a custom list. So in my case, star.github.com, I could have used it even without the license. To this third example that I want to allow the gambling category, I do need the license. Okay, so let's click on add. I'm gonna add the rule under my GitHub rule. So allow users to gambling URLs. Let's say like this. Source, the same. Source user gambling. So in this case here, we're making a special Active Directory group. And as soon as the users become members of these groups that we're using here, they will be able to access these targets that we're configuring. How? If they're not part of this group, they're not gonna match. And if they're in the group, of course, coming from this source network, the source zone, they're gonna match this rule. Destination, again, my outside destination. In this case here, we need the category gambling. I'm gonna do again the RFC 1918 negate. Under application, I'm gonna allow here only 443. The URL category, I can click on add, and here I have the categories that Palo Alto networks offer you to choose. Gambling is here. And the action allow. Okay, let's take a look. I forgot something inside. I chose here lab, sometimes inside, sometimes lab. Okay, for this example, I can correct. Let's click here and choose inside. There you go. Gambling, outside, not this one. Using SSL and web browsing, port 443. To the category, gambling again. The categories, of course, is going to be here in the URL category. If you use URL category, I would strongly suggest you to activate this column so you can see. That's it for the third one. So guys, so far we have been using the whole time URL category. So far we haven't spoken about the URL filtering. The URL filtering is also a possibility for you to filter which URLs are supposed to be allowed for the users and which URLs are supposed to be denied for the users. The URL filtering configuration you find here under profile types. If you choose profiles, you can choose the URL filtering. In my case, I only have a default, but I can click here and start creating more different URL filterings. The big difference, which is something that unfortunately I don't find it so clear in the Palo Alto documentation, is that the URL category is used for you to match a traffic. So as you have the source zone, source address, destination zone, these are all objects that the Palo Alto uses to match a traffic to a rule. So use the destination. If you're trying to access 8888 and I have here in this destination address 8844, the file is not going to match my session to these rules, of course. The URL category is also the same. It's a matching criteria. It's used to try to match a traffic to the rule. URL filtering is not a matching criteria. If you're already here in this field, it means that your traffic has already matched. Let's say differently. The matching criteria are these ones. If all of them match, it means that the file needs to take an action. So the file is going to be here in this action field after everything else here on top has matched. So here in the action field, you can tell the file to deny the traffic or allow the traffic or drop the traffic, but it's related to the matching, the traffic that has matched these categories here on top. So the first thing that the file actually takes a look here is the action. If you have an action deny or drop or any other ones here that doesn't allow the traffic, the file doesn't take a look of any of these profile settings. These are all forgotten. It's called content inspection. The traffic only goes through the content inspection if you have here under action an allow. What does this URL filtering do? Let's click here on the URL filtering. There, you have a little bit more than what you see at the list of the URL category. The URL category is just a list of URLs, including some wildcards, that you can use as a matching criteria. Here, you have some decisions in the end. So whenever you see, okay, the traffic has matched, here you have some more decisions to make if the traffic is set to allow. I could also come here and say, okay, I want to block adult contents for everybody. It's possible? Yeah, it's possible. You need to understand that whenever you are here in this URL filtering profile, you have already a match in your rule. It means that the file, even if I have here either a block or an allow for the adult, the file is going to stop going down the file rule, the rule set. It's going to stop there because it has already a match. The last one would be to allow all users to access some categories and to block some other ones. So let's suppose you had a meeting with some directors and they gave you a list of the categories that they want to allow for the users and the categories that they want to block for all of the users, for all of the standard users, let's say like this. So you can create a rule called allow users to internet or standard users. So it's a standard rule. In this case, I have, let's say that they're all coming from inside. Can even do like this. So everybody that's coming from inside, going to outside. That's where my internet is at. Destination address, I'm gonna enter my RFC. This one, negate. Application. I would just enter here SSL, as I did with the other ones. Web browsing. Probably you'd use here 443 because if you're making a standard rule for the users, there's a big chance that they're going to be using more than SSL and web browsing. Let's select this. Leave it any. Here I have 443. So I'm not allowing anything else, but can be that here you could have Netflix if you're allowing this category. And then here under action, I have action allow. And I need URL filtering profile. So I'm gonna call this one standard profile, URL profile. And here I can choose what I want to allow and what I want to deny. So here I'm just gonna go through categories that the company is allowing and that's not supposed to allow. Okay, maybe a little bit going through this. Alert, it's an allow with a log. So I usually only use alert, I don't use allow. So I'm gonna just change to alert whatever I want to allow. Block, of course, what I want to block. The continue, it means that in some circumstances the user gets a window where he's supposed to click on continue as a warning. Be careful, you're trying to access a website that's not really directly allowed. Are you sure you want to continue something like this? But you usually need the SSL decryption for that. Otherwise it doesn't really work. It just blocks the traffic. And override, the user needs to enter a password. It's like the continue, and the user needs, instead of just clicking a button, he needs to enter a password, and the password needs to be correct, of course. I'm gonna just set to alert. I'm not gonna use in continue, you're gonna use alert and block. Okay, abortion, I don't want to block. Block, adult, block. AI, just gonna set to alert, alert. And you can go through this list. The list is relatively long of categories, and you can set to alert, or you can set to block whatever you want to block under site access. User credential submission means that the file is gonna be watching if you're filling up some web forms or something like this, entering your password. And in this case, you can also say, okay, I allow this nudity, but I don't allow the user to send their credentials, username and passwords through this website. Of course, you need, in this case, also the SSL decryption. Otherwise, it doesn't work. Okay, and this is how you can configure this whole rule. I hope you understood the big difference between URL category, which is a matching criteria, and the URL filtering, which here you can also configure some actions that the file is supposed to take, depending on which category the URL you're trying to access is being classified or is classified from the Palo Alto networks. You can also, of course, use custom URL categories, which they have higher priority in comparison to the predefined categories that come from the Palo Alto networks. And here you can also say, okay, I want to allow or you want to deny. I hope this explanation was okay for you to understand the difference between when you use URL category, when you use the FQDN in your rules, and when you use URL filtering. Hey guys, thank you very much for watching the video until the end. If you got some value from the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and maybe this video here is going to help you further with the Palo Alto configuration, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.